I was rereading the story in Matthew where the disciples are on sea and Jesus is sleeping, and the storm gets really wild, and Jesus is just still asleep, and the disciples they wake him up and like, what's going on? The storm, we're gonna drown. Da, 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 da. And Jesus is like, you guys are little faith, and then he storms the weather down. And I learned so much more. Not only is there a lack of faith, but they did not know anything about who this man was, Jesus Christ. And there's times we need to realize Jesus is God in the flesh, because he literally stopped the creation obeys him. He stopped the weather as God stopped the sun for Joshua. But we're not trying to look on that. The disciples were they had lack of knowledge. They didn't know Jesus was really more than a man. He was more than a prophet. He was more than a messenger. He is the Son of God. And that's the reason why they had that lack of faith, because they didn't think that there's no answers. Like they doubted. And that could be us sometimes. We don't know. Some people, and even I, we don't know Jesus enough. We really don't know who he really is. And when things happen, when we start drowning, we forget the true essence of Jesus Christ. This man came to save us. This is the Son of God. This is our Redeemer. Jesus is more than... We underestimate him so much. We just look at situations and we're like, no, I don't think Jesus is... He can do a lot of things, but just not this. There's too much chaos in my life right now. Let him deal with the storm. Just deal with the storm together. Jesus was in the storm with the disciples. He was in the boat as well. Let him be in your boat too. Let him help you. Trust him. Put faith in him. Read the Bible more. Get to know Jesus Christ, the person. And then when things happen, you now know who Jesus is fully. Because you're not insufficient like the disciples were. Their lack of knowledge of Jesus was small. But we don't have to be like that. Of course, the disciples knew who he was as they got to know him more, as do we. We have the New Testament. We have so much evidence out there. Read the Bible, get to know Christ, and then when things happen, when storms come into your life, there's no reason not to choose Jesus in those moments. He was a human. He ate food. He grew up poor. He was a carpenter. He cried. He got lost in crowds, and his mother and father were looking for him. He's human. He was a true human, but also divine and God in the flesh. Let's not forget that. So what I want to say is, when you know the person of Jesus Christ, there's no turning back. You give everything to him. You trust him in every situation, every storm in your life. Don't be like those disciples, little of faith. And it's funny how before Jesus addressed the faith issue, then he stopped the storm. It wasn't the other way around. He didn't stop the storm first, then said, "You're little of faith." Because the faith part was more troubling than the storm. Do you know how crazy that is? Jesus' disciples' faith was more important than the storms in his eyes. He takes our faith so seriously. That's why there are trials and tribulations. That got me thinking, wow, they could drown right now, but Jesus says, you know what? I can easily stop this storm. Let me deal with these storms first in their minds and in their hearts. His faith. That's why there's trials and tribulations. That's why Job and Jesus were tested. Jesus could have ran away like Adam. He could have sinned. Like Satan, he could have sinned, Jesus. But no, he was in the Word. And he stuck to God. And that's how we should be. So overall, what I'm trying to say is, get to know Jesus more. Because the less you know Jesus, the harder it is to trust him, to know him. When you don't know much about him, you're not going to have that relationship. You're not going to have as much faith. But at the same time, there's people who didn't know much about Jesus, like the criminal on the cross, and he trusted him. So we got to have our heart to Jesus, truly. You don't need to know every fact about him, but just trust him 100%. Trust him 100%. And don't doubt. Have the faith. Have the faith. Unlike those disciples that didn't have it, he taught them a lesson. And he teaches us too. We're not perfect. Not all of us. I'm still learning. So are you. Hope this video made sense. God bless you all.